there's a type of game that almost never makes it onto lists. It's not the most famous, it's not the best-selling one, but it's the kind that stays with you. These are games many people ignore, drop early, or judge the wrong way. If you've ever finished a game and just stood there, staring at the screen, thinking about what you just experienced, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Today, I want to show you some of those games.
My name is Dante.
DMC. Devil May Cry is often seen as a failed attempt to reinvent an icon, but that is a superficial view. The central focus isn't just Dante's new look, but the courage to use action as a form of social critique. The true impact comes from how the game utilizes limbo, a dimension where reality warps to reveal how media and consumerism control humanity. Many gave up early on, refusing to accept the new aesthetic. But this barrier prevented them from seeing one of the most fluid combat systems of that generation. The game demands that you stop comparing it to the past to feel the weight of a world that literally hates you. The closing streets and crushing buildings are the visual manifestation of a system that refuses to be challenged. The essence here isn't about replacing the classic, but proving that the series' soul resides in its technical gameplay and rebellious attitude. In the end, Dante's journey reveals that a game's identity doesn't lie in the hero's appearance, but in the courage to deliver an experience that still pulses with a unique energy. It remains an underrated title simply because it had the audacity to be different. Many look at Alien, Isolation, and see only a space hide-and-seek game that drags on too long. But that view ignores the genius behind its horror. The focus here isn't on cheap jump scares, but on simulating the real vulnerability of being prey before a perfect predator. The true impact comes from its artificial intelligence, which doesn't follow programmed routes, but learns from your movements, forcing a state of constant alertness. Many gave up out of frustration, labeling the game as punishing. However, this barrier is what creates absolute respect for the monster. The game wants you to feel the panic of a tracker that beeps, but doesn't reveal where the threat hides. The essence isn't about fighting the alien, but about accepting that you are not in control. In the end, Amanda Ripley's journey reminds us of our own fragility in the face of the unknown.
Where the hell is everyone?
Trying to understand the evil within merely as a Resident Evil successor is the first step toward understanding nothing about its disturbing identity. The game doesn't offer the comfort of clear rules or safety. It throws you into a blender of nightmares where reality itself is your greatest enemy. Often criticized for being stiff and unforgiving, it uses that difficulty to strip away your control and put you in the shoes of someone whose mind is shattering in real time. The true impact doesn't come from jump scares, but from the constant instability of environments shifting beneath your feet, challenging your logic and sanity. Many players give up out of frustration, but the essence here lies in the translation of trauma into gameplay mechanics. Every stretching hallway and transforming room is a reminder that the deepest horror isn't hidden in the shadows, but in what we try to hide from ourselves. In the end, Sebastian Castellanos' journey is a brave dive into psychic chaos that lingers in your mind long after the credits, not for the violence, but for the way it makes you question what is real.
Letter of blood, remnants of a ruined past. You say you seek the plains of silence, but do you?
In Mad Max, your heart doesn't beat in your chest, it roars inside a V8 engine. Many labeled this open world as empty and repetitive, but that emptiness is exactly the game's greatest strength. The game doesn't want to distract you with colorful activities. It wants you to feel the despair of a wasteland that devours the soul of anyone crossing it. The barrier here is the intentionally contemplative pace, where the silence is only broken by the sound of the twisted metal of your magnum opus. Every piece of scrap found and every drop of water collected becomes a monumental victory in a land that doesn't want you to survive. The essence isn't about conquering forts or territories, but a near-religious search for a shred of dignity amidst the absolute chaos of the sand. It's a journey where Max's individual effort clashes with the brutality of nature, proving that even at the end of days, the human instinct to build something of our own is what keeps us sane. In the end, the beauty of Mad Max lies in being a game about absolute loneliness and obsession, showing that in a fragmented world, your car is more than transport. It's the only proof that you still exist.
Farewell. Without Sarah, I knew that we were...
Forget the idea that Days Gone is just another generic zombie apocalypse. What truly beats here isn't the noise of the hordes, but the deafening silence of a world that simply stopped turning. The game was trashed at launch due to technical flaws, creating a barrier of prejudice that stopped the audience from seeing Deacon St. John's journey for what it truly is: a visceral study of grief and the stubbornness of not accepting the end. The gameplay, which many found slow or heavy, is a deliberate choice to make you feel the vulnerability of depending on a machine and scarce resources in a hostile territory. As you cross the roads of Oregon, loneliness begins to give way to an almost painful sense of purpose. The essence here isn't about clearing icons on a map, but understanding that in a world that has already died, caring for what remains is the ultimate act of resistance. In the end, Deacon's journey proves that hope isn't a bright and heroic feeling, but something dirty, mechanical, and persistent that refuses to fade, even when everything around says there is nothing left to fight for. It's a game about the beauty of keeping on, even without knowing where the road will lead.
I won't ask again. Where is your son?
A Plague Tale: Innocence is often dismissed as just another stealth game. Many people drop the journey too early. They complain about the slow pace, the limited combat, or how fragile the characters feel. But you have to understand, this game was never about power. It's about vulnerability. You aren't a hero. You are Amisha Daroon, a 15-year-old girl leading a brother she barely knows by the hand, while the world around her collapses into teeth and shadows. The mechanics are simple, sometimes even claustrophobic. And that is exactly the point. The game wants you to feel small, exposed, completely at the mercy of a cruel fate. Every movement is tense. Every torch you light is a thin line between life and a terrifying death beneath your feet. A Plague Tale doesn't give you the weapons to win a war. It gives you the tools to delay the inevitable. Those who persist, those who embrace the fear, discover a story that hits so much harder. Precisely because the game never, for a single moment, lets you feel safe. In the end, it's not about defeating the plague. It's about what's left of you, once it passes. Pathologic 2 is a game many people quit due to a lapse in judgment. They complain about the awkward controls, the slow pacing, and the constant feeling that they are failing. And the game does absolutely nothing to help you. But understand, none of this is accidental. Pathologic 2 wants you to feel powerless, weak, and lost, always one step behind a disaster that never sleeps. Time here is not just a mechanic, it's a predator hunting you while the city dies. The bitter truth is that you simply cannot save everyone. There is no comfort or easy reward here. The game refuses to treat you like a hero. It treats you like an ordinary person trying to survive an impossible situation. It feels unfair, but that unfairness is the point. It's about who you choose to be when you know that losing is inevitable. Return of the Obra. Din is the kind of game that makes many people give up right at the start, simply because it refuses to hold your hand. There are no objective markers, no hint system, and no frantic action to fill your time. You are left alone on a ghostly ship with nothing but a list of names and a colossal mystery to solve. In this game, progress doesn't come from mechanical skill, but from your powers of observation and deduction. It requires you to pay attention to tiny details that most other games would normally ignore. If you give up early, the experience will feel cold and confusing. But if you choose to stay, it becomes one of the most rewarding detective experiences you have ever had. The game doesn't treat you like a child. It trusts your intelligence to unravel a complex story hidden among the dead. What Remains of Edith Finch is a game that many players ignore for one simple reason. It is meant to be experienced, not beaten. There is almost no mechanical challenge, no fail states, and absolutely no pressure on the player. It's because of this lack of traditional difficulty that some people dismiss it as hollow. But what those players fail to realize is that the game is not about overcoming obstacles. It's about the weight of stories and the power of memory. You explore a labyrinthine house that serves as a mausoleum for a family marked by tragedy. Every room tells the story of a different relative, and the gameplay shifts to reflect their unique personalities. Every chapter is different, because every life was singular. The game forces you to look at death not as a failure, but as the inevitable conclusion of a journey. When it ends, you don't feel like you finished a task. You feel as though you carried the legacy of an entire family. It's an experience about how we find meaning in loss, something far deeper than any epic combat. Gris is often seen as just a beautiful indie game, something short, artistic, and light, meant only for contemplation. This is exactly why many players end up underestimating the true depth of its journey. What appears to be just an exercise in aesthetics is in reality a powerful and painful representation of grief and loss. The game barely uses any words. It chooses to tell its story through color, movement, and music. In the beginning, the world is gray and empty, reflecting the protagonist's state of shock and emotional numbness. As you progress, the return of colors is not just a visual effect, but symbolizes each stage of emotional recovery, from anger to final acceptance. Gris doesn't offer you epic combat or complex dialogue, but it offers you empathy. It shows that the healing process is not a straight line, but a path filled with falls and discoveries. In the end, you realize you weren't just playing, you were helping a soul find her voice again. It is a masterpiece about learning how to live after your world has lost all its color. In Firewatch, you don't play to win, you play to lose yourself in isolation. The game puts you in the shoes of Henry, a man who takes a lonely job as a fire lookout in a remote forest. Your only connection to the outside world is a voice through a handheld radio. Delilah, your supervisor. What begins as a calm routine of patrol and exploration quickly transforms into something much denser and more disturbing. The core mechanic of the game is not combat, but conversation. You choose how to respond, how much of yourself to reveal, and how to build this long-distance relationship. As you hike through stunning landscapes, the tranquility of nature starts giving way to a growing paranoia. You begin to feel like you are being watched, that every shadow between the trees hides something, and that there are secrets in the forest that were never meant to be found. The tension in Firewatch is purely psychological. The game manipulates you into questioning reality, turning small incidents into evidence of something much larger. If you go in expecting action, you will be frustrated. But if you allow yourself to be immersed in the loneliness and uncertainty, you will find one of the most intimate and personal mysteries ever made. It is a journey about the search for connection in a place where you are supposed to be completely alone. Soma is often seen just as a suspense game set in an underwater station, but that is a very superficial view. Although there are dangers in its halls, the central focus is not just about giving you scares or making you run from creatures. The true impact of Soma comes from the questions it forces you to ask about identity, consciousness, and what actually defines a person when biology is no longer the only factor. Many players give up early because they find the gameplay simple or limited, but this choice is intentional. The game wants you to stop focusing on action mechanics to pay attention to the profound ideas at play. You are placed in situations that test your ethics, forcing reflections on the continuity of life and the value of our memories in a world that is disappearing. Ultimately, Soma doesn't just want to make you tense, it wants to make you reflective. It challenges your perception of what it means to be alive and the future of our species. It is an intellectual journey disguised as science fiction that stays in your mind for a long time, not because of shocking moments, but because of the depth of the themes it chooses to explore.
You didn't actually think we'd just let you walk in here, did you?
We've been set up.
Welcome to Hell, Walker.
At first glance, Spec Ops, the line looks like just another generic military shooter, filled with all the cliches we've seen hundreds of times before. It uses a desert setting and very direct objectives, which led many people to overlook the title when it was first released. However, this ordinary appearance is actually a strategy to disarm the person playing it. As the story progresses, the experience stops being about pulling triggers and starts being about the weight of one's choices. The narrative slowly pulls the rug out from under the player, trading the glory of victory for increasingly heavy moral dilemmas. There comes a point where the feeling of being the hero of the story completely disappears, replaced by a real discomfort regarding the consequences of every action taken in Dubai. The gameplay is kept simple and without major innovations, precisely because the focus here is on psychological deconstruction. It's not an experience designed to be fun or relaxing, but rather to be impactful. It's one of those rare cases where the game's value doesn't lie in its combat mechanics, but in the brutal way it confronts the player with the reality of war and the very image of a savior that we usually project in these types of games. Imagine being thrown into an entire solar system without a single compass or a to-do list. This is exactly how the journey in Outer Wilds begins, and it is this vacuum of information that ends up pushing many people away. There are no arrows pointing to the next step, nor objective markers on a minimalist map. At first, exploration feels like a random effort, where you wander through strange planets without understanding exactly what you are looking for, or why time seems to be running out. However, this absolute freedom hides the most intelligent game design of recent years. Every forgotten ruin and every fragment of ancient text isn't just decoration, they are pieces of a monumental puzzle that connects the entire universe. The big difference here is that progress isn't about unlocking new weapons or leveling up, but about the knowledge stored in your own mind. The only thing stopping you from reaching the end is your own lack of understanding of the rules of this system. When an idea finally clicks, the satisfaction is incomparable, precisely because the path wasn't spoon-fed by tutorials. It is an experience that places curiosity above mechanical skill, proving that self-discovery is the most powerful reward a game can offer.
The name's Higgs, the particle of God that permeates all existence.
And we've reached what might be the most important game on this list. Carrying the weight of the world on your back isn't just a metaphor in Death Stranding, it's the mechanic that defines every second of the journey. In the beginning, what many labeled as a simple walking simulator delivers a dense and intentionally exhausting experience. Maintaining balance and planning every step on uneven terrain turns the act of walking into a constant challenge. It's a barrier that demands a level of patience that few players are willing to give. However, as the miles pass, the absolute loneliness is filled by something unexpected. Structures, bridges, and roads start appearing in the desolate landscape, built by other players you've never even met. Without realizing it, that individual effort transforms into a collective endeavor. The weight that was once a burden gains a greater purpose, making the path easier for those who follow you. The essence here isn't about reaching the destination, but about building these invisible connections. The game transforms hard work into an act of empathy, proving that helping a stranger can be the most rewarding gift of all. In the end, the solitary trek reveals that no one is truly alone, and that every trail left behind is a link of hope in a fragmented world. Which of these games did you ignore, abandon early on, or think simply wasn't for you, only to realize later that you were completely wrong? Or which game should have been on this list but didn't make the cut? If you are the type of player who looks for experiences that don't reveal themselves immediately, but instead take root in your mind and make you question reality long after the credits roll, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.